water solutions as far as the sludge removal. It says Wakanda and Sageport. Is there any way that we can see what the ratio is between the two, being that we're having extra sludge issues at the Wakanda plant right now?
I think this was billed combined, but I can certainly send you a copy of the invoice that we've got.
Okay. Yeah, it would just be helpful to see by contrast. I mean, being that we're talking all about Wakanda right now. Obviously, part of the issue is that it's taking more effort to treat the sludge down there and have it carried away. So I'd just like to see the kind of the ratio between the two.
No, absolutely. And I just want to point out that Denali is now, Veris is now Denali. So it's a new company that's purchased that Denali. So that's why the invoicing is different, but I'll certainly provide that information.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, motion passes.
Resolution 3 to approve checks 12964 through 12982, the amount of $113,850.50 to be dispersed from First Bank.
Anybody?
I think I have a question on,
I do need a second though first.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been seconded. Okay, go ahead, Judy.
Okay, I guess the question I have is on the pump services on check 122968. We're getting another pump for Sageport. I mean, it looks like that's a new pump for the wastewater treatment plant over there.
I've got 12968 is the Go Ditch metering flume.
Oh,
Am I
okay.
missing? Am I looking at the wrong? Oh, you're looking at Excel pump services.
Uh-huh.
Actually, Will, can you speak to that?
What was that, Diana?
It was check 12969 to Excel Pump Services, pump controller and pump at Sageport Wastewater Treatment Plant for $6,104.
That's yep, that's a new pump replacement plus controls interface, switches, breakers on the pump went bad and we replaced some of that material that's aged out a little bit there as well. So for replacement on that.
So that is
that's who we're planning.
Not one of the new ones.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Once again, Gove Ditch, 3 different disbursements for flumes, approval of flumes. I can give you the check numbers.
I don't think that's necessary.
Okay.
So basically, the goat ditch, we're past the water court case, and we're trying to get the location of the flume finalized with Douglas County. And what has now happened, and I don't have a good update because I'm meeting with Douglas County tomorrow, as well as TST, but the cultural assessment has found, and with Douglas County's input, that there's a 2-track road that we might be using or had planned on using. And so, and it's just turning into quite the challenge to get this thing approved. So we're trying to work through all of the cultural assessment things with the Army Corps of Engineers and all of the other permitting agencies. It's the same as we talked about last meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Resolution 4 to ratify consent agenda items dated 2/19/21 in the amount of $6,782.43, and consent agenda items dated 3/5/21 in the amount of $7,320.68, which were previously dispersed from Wells Fargo.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Okay, that does it for disbursements. Okay, we'll next move to the Wakanda wastewater treatment plant power and odor updates. Diane, would you please bring us up to speed from the last meeting?
So we're still working through getting all of the equipment ordered. At the last meeting, I provided the board that the information that we had ordered all of the equipment. That equipment is on order. We're trying to get firm dates. And unfortunately, on Thursday or Wednesday last week, we had another motor. This time it was the base of the motor that blew out. And so we're in the process of getting that replaced, and that will be done tomorrow. So we have had some additional complaints, and we're spending additional funds trying to get this thing rectified.
Okay,
Turning out to be a nightmare, isn't it?
I would say so.
Diana, how expensive is this motor gonna be?
The motor we've already purchased is under $2,000. We've got a new contractor who's supposed to be the best in the business. I haven't got his rates yet, but he will be out tomorrow morning to get it installed. And he knows what he's working with. We've sent him all of the information as somebody that GMS, the engineering group, has worked with previously. And they think that they can deal with the existing base plate that's out there that the last motor sheared from due to the age of the base plate. And so, I don't know, Will, do you want to speak to that more than I do?
No, that's correct, Diane. I think over the years, that base plate, which is just some steel and adjusting screws and nuts, that's original to the digester that was installed in the 70s. Over the years, I believe it's been retrofitted and repaired multiple times. I think it's past repair at this point, which is kind of like what we've been talking about, is the replacement of some items and moving forward with the odor and stuff like that, which is going to actually fit into the parts and replacements that we ordered recently.
Oh. Okay.
Let's see, anybody else have any comments or questions on that?
Yeah, this is Jim. So where are we at as far as getting proposals from the consulting engineers to actually proceed with the fixes at Wakanda?
They're working on the immediate needs portion of it already, but as far as the proposals for the additional work, they're working on that proposal as well. So they're working on all of that.
And when are we going to have that? I think it's been over 3 months ago that we talked about getting proposals from the engineers. If we're going to fix Wakanda, we got to fix it. We got to get going.
No, I agree with you, but my understanding is that the board's decision was to get this immediate needs stuff done as soon as possible. And that's really what we've been focused on. And everybody's working on the proposals, and that will be done. But really the focus from everybody has been to get these immediate needs addressed, in which the board had allocated funding for.
That's correct.
Yes.
And Diane, to that point, on the phase 2 portion of it, because the funds we approved dealt with the pieces that did not require state approval or involvement in the work that we were doing, and that's the work that we immediately commissioned and
Correct.
put money aside for. Part 2, the part that requires all the state input and everything else, those we're getting bids from both TST and
GMS.
GMS. Yeah. So those 2 bids are work in process.
That is correct.
Okay. And do you have a rough idea when we might get that? Because obviously the information we've heard is that all the state approvals and everything else, once the process starts, that alone could take like a year.
I don't disagree with that. But I think we're trying to get the immediate needs addressed first, and then better define what the second phase is based on what we have come up with for the immediate needs.
Okay.
And I know we've talked about it in general, but we're trying to lay down the specifics so we don't get things done duplicate or bid on it, we're trying not to waste money on this effort.
Yeah, I can understand that. It makes sense because unfortunately, I mean, as we move forward, some things break and it changes the plan. And one thing you might have been planning to do now is different because you just did something else. So I understand that, but obviously, you're aware that, you know, the board wants to move as quickly as possible. And as long as we're doing that, you know, so be it.
And I can't tell you how much district staff would like that moved as quickly as possible.
I can imagine because obviously your day-to-day problems go away and now it's a more of a long-term focus.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, let's move to item D, Bureau of Reclamation grant opportunities. Mr. Maris, that was going to be your presentation for this meeting. So if we could hear from you as far as what you've put together.
All right, thanks, Gary. So Diana put into the board packet, basically the first part of the small scale water efficiency projects is just a summary of the grant opportunity that's available through the Bureau of Reclamation. This program has been around for a few years now, and of course, subject to annual appropriations. So you can see here, it's a 50-50 cost share funding to irrigation and water districts, tribes, states, and other entities with authority for water projects. And so they're looking for, you know, small scale water efficiency projects. So, you know, I think some of the items that were identified in the water study that was just completed regarding, you know, putting in equipment, skate equipment in place on the tanks, have the tanks communicating with the treatment plant, you know, some of the additional metering that's in there. All those items would fit under what would be eligible for this grant program. The things that aren't eligible are things like repairs. So, for example, if we have a meter somewhere and it fails and we have to replace it, that's not an eligible cost under the program. What the application looks like, I listed a few things here. That standard form 424 is that anybody that's done any kind of government financing, very familiar with that form. It's used for all federal programs. It's just a standard form. Obviously, we'd have to provide a narrative that talks about what we want, what kind of projects we're going to do, you know, things like environmental potential impacts. And of course, one of the big items is the Buy American product, so that we are assured that the information, the equipment we're buying is made in America. There's some certifications. We're required to do the disclosure of lobbying activities to ensure that we're not spending any of this grant money we're asking for on lobbying members of Congress or agencies to get the money. And then the DUNS and SAMS registration, again, are standard kind of governmental where you have to go in and get a DUNS number and then do this SAMS registration, which is kind of a general database that the government maintains of all the entities that are getting federal assistance. So again, it's, you know, it's about a 30-day process to get those registrations and get the numbers and stuff in place, so we can then file an actual application. I also attached it's SF 424D, which is one of the assurances statements that we'd have to sign as part of the application. And so this is kind of, as Gary mentioned earlier, what we call the strings attached. And again, you can see the information there. It's, you know, all the standard kind of governmental thing on civil rights and equal opportunity and lead-based paint and yada, 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 the, you know, government financing strength. I think that the good thing is that with grant programs, generally these federal requirements are only in place as long as the money is being spent and the government actually, you know, following up to ensure that this assurances or these federal requirements are being met would end the calendar year in which the money ends up being spent. So it's not like it, you know, the difference here, a grant versus, let's say, a loan. If you've got a 40-year loan from an agency with some grant money to finance the project, then these federal requirements continue on for the term of the loan, 40 years. With a grant only, it's only in place as long as you have the money and until you get it spent. So it's a big difference there, and the federal strings don't go on forever and ever. The other piece of information that's in there, which I'll cover. I'll credit Judy with this one, but the Colorado Water Conservation Loan Grant Programs. So again, this is just a fact sheet from their website that they offer some assistance as well. Of course, the Colorado Water Conservation Board, we previously talked about briefly, with some of the issues that they were trying to talk about, or at least under consideration in Plum Creek. So it's the same group. So not only do they do the water flow issues for, in our case, what they're looking for species, protected species, they're also doing some funding programs. And so Judy had mentioned this program in some emails, I believe, and so I included this in the pack as well. So Judy, you get kudos for finding that program. That's all I had, unless somebody has questions.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. Good job.
Yeah, I find the information helpful, and obviously based on the discussion we've had earlier, as far as looking for alternative sources of revenue as we move down this path of things that we need to be working on. I think we do need to look closely at these opportunities, have a good feel for how some of them may or may not fit in our future plans of projects we know that we have coming up, or some things that maybe we could move forward in our plans because the grants exist. With that said, I really do want to understand them better. I mean, when I read the list of all the federal things on that sheet, I mean, I don't even know what some of these Hatch Acts and Bacon Acts and all this kind of stuff are. So, before we're signing off on anything, I would sure want, some of our legal counsel to kind of give us an idea of what you're agreeing to in some of these documents, first of all, so that the board is familiar with what we're signing up for on any of these things. Same goes for the any state efforts, what the requirements are, and how it's a good thing for us, or the risk reward is in our favor as opposed to not in our favor. So I'd like to get some more information on that. Additionally, we have talked about other alternative sources of revenue, being selling any water outside the district, any number of different situations that might come up that were available to utilize. And from that standpoint, I think it would be helpful if we probably had another work session at some time in the near future to go into detail on some of this and really explore alternative sources of revenue that we can look at for some of the projects and have a clear understanding. I mean, I'd also like to hear from some of the other districts in the area that have perhaps utilized some of these programs and how they found them to work either positively or negatively. I mean, nothing's perfect, but I'd like to hear their experiences across the board. I'm sure Parker probably has a fair amount of experience with that whole Reuter-Hess dam and everything they put in. So there may be someone there we can chat with as well, or maybe some of the smaller districts, maybe somebody bit into the apple on something from the state of Colorado that we can get their impression on. So I think going forward, this is an opportunity. We just need to determine how good of an opportunity it is, and if it actually does fit our needs, and if the risk is well worth the reward that we get in the end. So as you look forward, go ahead.
City of Larkspur has accessed those federal programs on multiple occasions, so they could be one of the issues you talked to. And I think Diana probably has experience with the other system that she was involved with earlier as well. So Diana, you guys got federal grants and loans up there to work on the other system, didn't you?
That is correct.
Okay. Well,
she knows firsthand.
Okay. Well, That's good. And I would like to hear, I'd like to hear, you know, see what Parker has done, because I'm sure, I mean, with everything that, all the new stuff they put in, they had to be getting monies from a variety of places. So I'd kind of like to hear if they've had any experience with this and, you know, what their thoughts were either way. But it will give us an idea with what they did on a large project perspective. Will help and perhaps address some of our larger need projects down the road that we may be getting into and be watching for them. Because I know they're all kind of, as I've read through some of this stuff, each one kind of earmarks a specific area based on size and whether it's something new, saves water, or whatever, as opposed to just fixing things. So yeah, I'd like to continue to learn on this, and the more we understand that, so that we're ready to move on something if the opportunity shares itself. But I would hate to just jump into something blindly and put ourselves at risk. So Diane, if you can, as the calendar looks, I mean, you know what your timing is on some of these things that are going on. I know you're extremely busy right now trying to close out the Wings project and trying to get things, the first phase of the Wakanda wastewater treatment plant running smoothly. But if there's an opportunity in April for a work session, that would be great. If not, I'd really like to have one by sometime in May.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Gary, if I could interject a little bit, I'd just be curious to ask Jim. I think an ideal candidate for the $75,000 grant would be adding metering to our system so that we could identify where our potential leaks are and figure out how much we're using for backwashing and that sort of thing. That would be, you know, it would look good, I think, because it would be saving water. And what do you think about that, Jim? Do you think that sounds reasonable?
Absolutely. And, you know, you weren't on the board, Tony, several months back, or maybe even longer, when I provided some information on grant money that the Bureau of Reclamation had put out to other water systems. And a lot of those were meter type projects, the radial reads or automatic meters, and absolutely any kind of metering that would increase, provide the potential to increase our water efficiency use would absolutely qualify. I think you keep in mind here, it's a 50-50 match and it's a $75,000 maximum grant. And, you know, you look at, if we're going to do, I think the full-blown metering recommendation on the engineer study was over 600,000. So, you know, we're not going to get very far with, you know, $150,000 project. Doesn't mean we can't commit more than a 50-50 match. And I think, you know, I would recommend that because that's going to increase your opportunity or your chance of getting that grant. But it's a $75,000 grant. You're going to have to put in a minimum of 75. And water metering, as you suggested, would obviously be a good proposal in my opinion.
Right, and the nice thing about it is once it's finished, once the meters were installed and working properly, then, as you said, we wouldn't be subject to any additional regulations from the government, and then we could add more as we went along because we are definitely under metered in this district, and I'm sure we are leaking in places that we can identify where the leaks are.
I bet you're right.
Yeah, and this is not a one and done type grant. I mean, we could apply in multiple years, but just keep in mind that it's, you know, so like this year, the application period ends tomorrow, March 18th, and they don't, in their information, it says they plan to award, I think, by the end of December. So it's going to take them the whole year. I mean, I would guess they'll have the awards done by the end of September because that's the fiscal year. And they want to get that money that's been appropriated obligated before the end of the fiscal year. But it's, you know, it's not going to move at lightning speed. These projects and these grants, you're going to have to be patient, and you know, you can apply in more than 1 year. But obviously, if you know, the chances of you getting, unless you have a really good project, I would say the chances of you getting 2 grants, in 2 consecutive years is probably pretty small. You might get one the 3rd year, but it's, you're not going to get the money every year, but you can apply and, take your shot. It's just, you're going to have to be patient.
Well, then hopefully the federal government might start some infrastructure programs too. That could help us.
That is a possibility, and that's why I want to, get a good feel for what these programs are like. So as these things do come available,
We
if
should
something,
jump on them.
right, we can jump on something if the risk reward situation is in our favor. So, okay, well, it's a good
I
start.
I'll just throw in there, Gary, that most of this money that they're talking about in the infrastructure part is going to be loan money through the state revolving loan program. So it's federal money that goes to the states, who then loan the money out. So the state gets a grant from the federal government, and then the state turns around and makes loans with that grant. So again, keep in mind, if the state makes a 20-year loan, you're going to have those federal requirements in there for 20 years. Not that we need to be afraid of that. I'll go through all these disclosures and stuff that, I can explain every one of those paragraphs and tell you what it means, but just know that, 20 years is a long time.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. Okay, thank you. Let's move.
Thanks for the information.
Let's move to the next item on the agenda, the IREA easement for the A4 well. Diana?
Okay, so not only did we do an electrical analysis at the Wakanda Wastewater Treatment Plant, we moved on to Glen Grove, Sageport, and both the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. And so in the Dropbox folder, there's a lot of additional information that we have some power issues in the district. And this is a power issue specifically at the A4 well. And Will, I'll let you explain what we've done and why we did it.
All right, thank you, Diana. So when we were doing our evaluation, we came across that the district has Delta power at the A4 location. It was recommended by IREA and Principal Electric that found this, that Delta power is kind of unstable. I guess when they built this, it was, 50 years ago, they would build these, and it's called the Delta. I learned a lot about it myself as well. So it was recommended us to actually upgrade to get rid of this insignificant or, power that's questionable at some times at our A4 location at Sageport. So is what we did is we engaged IREA, contacted them, moved forward with the USERC cabinet replacement and upgrading that just to 480-277, which is a standard electrical that we have at the majority of the plants. So that's kind of where we're sitting. IREA's installed their transformer. Our USERC has been installed. So here, this month, we're going to do the cutover onto that new power. This should be sustainable for the well. It'll be better operating for the well, less fluctuations. This isn't really an IREA problem. This is just old Delta power that we needed to really have upgraded.
Have we found this power at another location?
Yeah, at the Glen Grove location, we found the same sort of power there. IREA's even said, they send people out for training on this power at the Glen Grove plant, which is in the front of Perry Park. So it is still recommended that possibly replace and upgrade that power for more sustainable and more consistent power as well at that location.
So the document that I included was basically an easement agreement that Director Peterson had signed on behalf of the district, and I wanted to make sure that this was ratified in the meeting minutes.
Okay.
Make a motion to ratify the agreement.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, need a second. Okay, all those in favor of ratifying the easement agreement that you have in front of you from IREA, with IREA, signify by saying aye.
All right.
All right.
Okay, Motion passes.
Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is the Bermuda Ranch development. It's pretty close to being live. We didn't want to hold it up until the next board meeting if possible, because we would like to start receiving tap fee and development fee revenue. And so there's a conditional letter of approval that was prepared by TST, who's done the inspections for the last year and a half. That basically says we're ready to go live. And I wanted the board to accept this with the conditions that were listed on the letter.
Okay. Has everybody had an opportunity to read through this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just have some brief discussion. I'll just make a few comments. Obviously, they done a good job in terms of identifying everything that needs to be done yet. And I mean, looks quite thorough as far as what has to be finished. They also give a timeline when it has to be finished by. And the other thing I like about it too is if they don't finish it, the district's caveat is we can just, stop service until they actually go ahead and get it taken care of. So we're covered. The other thing I liked is that it appears in here that Morgan Paul has been involved in the process with them and things that he has requested. Make sure that the minutes is also taken into account here.
I'm sorry, Gary, we can't hear you. Can you repeat that about Morgan?
It says,
Or it's been a
maybe my microphone's covered. Okay. I said the one thing I liked in there also was that they had included Morgan Paulk's discussions with them on things that he wanted finished and completed based on his participation in the project. And I thought that was good too. So everything is laid out, very, very thoroughly, I think. So I feel very comfortable ratifying this agreement myself based on what they've done. Anybody else have a comment?
I thought the agreement was, when you're working with like a blank, it's like having an empty slate of land, how these pieces are all going to fit together is really hard to visualize.
No, I'll tell you, Judy, I was out there last week and it is insane how much work they've done. You don't realize how much pipe they've laid, how many services they've installed until you start driving around. They've done an incredible job.
Okay.
I think the fact that we can pull a pin on this if they don't comply is huge.
Right.
That pretty much sells me on the whole deal.
And we still have letters of credit in our possession. They were just renewed a month ago to make sure that we're covered for the cost to the district. And I want to say that Tom Weens has paid in full, so there's no debt outstanding at this point in time.
Very good.
All right, so will somebody make a motion to approve? I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional acceptance document. I'll need a second.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not,
Gary, I have a question.
sure.
So all the manholes that are listed as exemptions, so I'm guessing that is because the system's not totally built out, that they're going to continue building as they need to and as the houses get built and sold. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was a phased project.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Okay, all those in favor of approving, providing the conditional acceptance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
motion passes. I'm sure Mr. Weens will be pleased to hear that there's light at the end of the tunnel for him.
I'm sure he is.
Yes. Now all he needs is some pretty sunny weather to lure potential buyers out here.
Right.
Park is a much prettier place in the summer than it is in the winter.
Okay, let's move to operational status, the systems report. Anybody has any questions or comments for Will on that, please?
This is Jim. So last meeting, there was some discussion about having trouble getting up to the Hog John tank, and that they were getting some alarms up there that we hadn't been able to get up there and check on them. Has that been corrected?
The repairs will need to be made on that, Jim. For the transducers got stuck in the ice, and so we've investigated it. We just need to make the repairs on that, and we have those parts on order. It's just small transducers to drop in there. I think the ice caught them and probably tore those out.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Will, how are we making any progress on the sours test?
At Wakanda, no, we're not. We're running about the same, 2.5 to 3. We need a 1.5 milligrams per liter. So with treating, and of course, you know, losing air. So that's the issue that we have is we need to, and that's what we've proposed and that's what we've ordered, is to bump up the air production in that digester so we can start to meet those. We're just not producing enough air throughout the digester.
Okay, so what kind of timing do you anticipate we're at until that will ameliorate itself?
That's what we're waiting for from GMS. And it is so close. They have the blower, they've got the motor, they've got the one other component, and they just are missing one piece. And then we'll be ready to do an installation. We've got the contractor lined up. And as soon as the contractor, or as soon as we get the other component so they can build the part, the complete part, we'll get it done.
Okay, good.
I'm estimating that hopefully, Gary, that, and that, you know, hopefully everybody takes that as the word hopefully. Once we get that installed, our treatment will turn right around. I mean, I believe it'll be night and day on what we see.
Great. That's
That'd be
good to hear.
wonderful.
I'm glad we're that close. Thank you guys for your effort. I know it's been a lot of extra work and time and everything else. So, and Diana, you probably need a new pair of shoes running between, or boots or something running between the Weens Ranch and there.
It's been a long period of time.
And then I think I did have in the report, just to note, you guys did bring up the ammonia. We're doing some tests. We should get those back really shortly on, we've taken ammonia throughout the whole plant, just so we can see how the units are working over there at Sageport. Just a little update for you all.
Okay. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because my screen just went blank, so, all right. Okay, any other discussion on the systems report? Okay, if not, let's move to the monthly staff report.
And I'll just open it up for questions. It looks like we're starting to get some movement on permits. We're hoping that Bermuda Ranch will start kicking off some stuff. At the next board meeting, there's going to be a Perry Park Summit feasibility study for the board's approval, which will have a direct impact on tap fees, development fees, and the Wakanda wastewater treatment plant. The folks on Bannock that are doing that new feasibility study are working very hard to get that finalized. And I know that the financing is still being worked on the original Bannock LID and the original Poncho LID. So they're still trying to get that done, but we're starting to move on a lot of areas.
Yeah, I was looking up at that summit. I looked on the computer and they look like they're about ready to get it approved.
Yeah, they're trying really hard.
Yes.
Okay, anybody have any other questions for Diana? I'm glad to hear that lots of things are moving forward that can generate additional revenue perhaps. So
That would make us happy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, would. So, okay. And let's see, it looks like we are now up to a total of $217,542 in money we've invested in the Wakanda wastewater treatment plant so far since this problem has begun. So it's an ongoing process, and hopefully we get this immediate area taken care of, and then we can start moving forward on the phase 2 option that we've talked about.
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
I'm still pleased at how well our money is holding up despite all.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, last thing, let's see, we had audience participation on the rate increase piece, but just in case anybody who's online wants to ask any other questions about what we just covered since that point in time, I will open it up for audience participation.
Hey, this is Steve again. Some good information you said later, and it sounds like there's a lot of opportunities there for additional revenue. I heard a grant of 75,000 might be possible. And so I just wanted to kind of tie that back to the other items and say, maybe we can get some answers on some of those things before confirming a rate structure. Those two things seem to tie together.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, to comment on that, Steve, we don't have a choice about fixing that wastewater treatment plant. We have residents down there who are complaining about the odor and noise. So we can't sit back and wait on the work on the wastewater treatment plant. And I think the point was you were bringing up concerns about the metering. Gary corrected me. I said it would only save electricity, but it would also save water treatment unless the leak was from the well to the water treatment plant, in which case then it would only be saving electricity. But we don't have a choice on fixing this wastewater treatment plant. And as Jim brought up, we're not going to see any money from a grant application for probably over a year, and it's only 75,000. Now, I agree fully with you that we need to figure out where our leaks are. Or it also could be that our meters are inaccurate, and we're basing this 37% lossage on what comes out of the wells versus what we bill for on the meters on everybody's house. And there could be some inaccuracies in that aspect too. So I just thought I would interject that.
Yeah, thanks. That seems clear and was informative. Maybe then, since there's that one urgent issue on the Wakanda part, couldn't that specific expense, it doesn't necessarily have to be lumped into the full 10-year maintenance plan, right? Because couldn't that specific expense be addressed in an alternative form to give us more time to pursue these other avenues for the longer term?
There really is no delaying. There's the immediate stuff we're currently spending money on, but we have to have these things in place. I think where these grants are going to, in the future, are going to come in handy, perhaps, will be on other pieces that are in the long-term plan as to how they fit in. Each of these grants, just from the pieces I have read, they talk about what they're for, and obviously this one, the $75,000 one, even just for the meter piece, that's small potatoes as far as what we're looking at. And putting money towards something like that at this point, when we've got all this other money going in the other place, doesn't make sense in the near future. However, as we look out at these other projects, it makes all the difference in the world how these things might fit in, which will negate large increases perhaps in the future. So all these things kind of fit together, but the current plan, and the other thing I guess I would say on this too is that as I've read some of these grant pieces, they don't necessarily provide grants to repairs and things like that. And as Jim mentioned, oftentimes the grants are geared to more underserved areas or rural areas where income is much less than what we currently have. So these are the things we're going to have to look at and see what historically has been available and what things might be available in the future. But I see things like this being helpful on future projects as we move through our current issues. And I don't see it affecting, what we're currently dealing with.
Couldn't the, just as an example, like couldn't the Wakanda one be cut out since it's the urgent? I'm hearing it's urgent in this meeting. Couldn't that one, for example, be financed in a different form, perhaps a debt issuance, just an example, while we maybe sort out some of the things for the other items that aren't as urgent?
Well, the whole thing we're doing down there, it's urgent. It's if we could do it faster, we would. The thing that's dragging it out is the government in terms of the state, with all their approval processes and everything else we have to go through, which includes the EPA and everybody else. So, it's just part of the beast. And, we don't, once we engage in it, we have to be moving forward, and we have to have the funds in place to be able to handle this. When we choose to pull the funds is another question, but we need to have the funds in place. So we're not going to get away from doing any, in another source from doing this. The only thing that we might be able to do is generate some additional revenue through additional water sales or some other sources of revenue we might be able to pull in throughout the year and next year that might help ameliorate some problems we will have. But, those kind of things might just cover, things that are above and beyond what the anticipated costs were for whatever reason. I mean, no matter what we do as a district, it always seems that the projects get more expensive because we do have a rather unique system out here. And I've talked earlier about our, different topography and everything else, and the miles of pipe and everything else we're dealing with and all that. So, I appreciate you're wanting to, try to get some money to go against this current one. And I'd like nothing better if we could, but it's not reality. We have.
Gary,
What about a bond
I
issue? Go ahead.
think we need to move on to board member discussion items. Is
Well,
there
they
anything
didn't
else
answer
from
my
the
question
board?
about a bond issuance example.
We've looked.
Gary,
We've looked at bond issues before. They're very time consuming. It's costly to have votes, all that stuff. You put a lot of money and effort into the front end of the whole thing, putting it all together to do it. And then if it doesn't get voted, now you're back to square one. So, I guess.
You look at the Eller report, it tells you got to keep raising the rates.
Right. So essentially this has to move forward the way it is. We don't have a whole lot of choice. And just so you're clear on some of this too, I mean, some of the pieces we're able to fix now are things the state doesn't have to weigh in on. That doesn't mean these other things aren't important. If we could do them tomorrow, we would. And this thing I just talked about, the sours test, I mean, because that we're not getting enough air going through there right now, it's costing us more to have our sludge removed. So there's just all kinds of issues that kind of continue to build on each other. And this is just not a nice to do project. It's a need to do, as Tony has said. And the sooner we can get it done, the better. Unfortunately, it's still going to take a little longer to get it done.
Right, and I'll add just one thing is our rates are not out of line. Even with the new rate structure, we are not out of line with the nearby districts. So it's not like we're asking people to pay a whole lot more than our neighbors are paying. By neighbors, I mean neighboring districts.
Well, I think Roxborough had they didn't really have enough water, and to remedy that, they're paying a good hefty amount of monthly billings. I mean, I'm thinking to the tune of $200-300.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're paying way more than we are.
Yeah. Well, they had an issue with water, and to secure water, that's what they agreed to do.
I find it amazing that our rates are as low as they are, given the altitude differences in our system and the amount of pipe that we have. The minimum lot size in Perry Park is an acre, and I think on the east side we've got a lot of 5-acre lots. So we got a lot more pipe than a lot of places do, and we have a lot more pressure relief valves, pressure reduction stations and whatnot than most places do. And yet our rates are right smack in the middle compared to our nearby districts.
We all know about the effort that it takes to fix a lift station. It is not a pretty process.
Yeah. Okay. Does everybody else have any other comments or questions?
Gary, I do. This
Okay.
is Jim. So I think maybe to answer Steve's question is we are intending to borrow money to finance the improvements that need to be done at Wakanda. The issue of raising rates is probably takes on a couple of different angles. One is we need to raise rates so when we go to borrow the money, we can show people lending the money to us that we have enough revenue to pay the debt back plus some kind of extra. You know, they're not going to borrow us money if the revenue is exactly 100% what we need to meet expenses plus make debt payments. There has to be some debt service coverage type of number there. I think the second part is, and I'm not sure if it's in this most recent financial report from Ehlers or not, but I know Diana has some prior reports where Ehlers is looking at our long-term capital improvement plan and versus our rates and doing projections on cost increases and essentially, you know, is telling us that, you know, over a, 10-year period or whatever the case may be into the future, our rates are essentially going to need to double in order to cover our costs. And that may sound outrageous, but again, keep in mind, this is a very small system and the cost of doing business continues to go up. The system is getting older. We're doing more and more repairs. And, this size of this system, as Gary talked about, trying to find additional revenue sources, whether it's through grants or selling more water, to other folks, we cannot continue to use rate increases to meet our cash needs. We're going to need to grow this system. And if we can't, something else is going to happen. So the system is not going to grow to a 10,000 user system, which is not possible out here. And where we're currently at, and even with Bermuda Ranch, that will help. But we're still a system that in the long term is not going to survive on its own. And I'll disagree with Gary where he made the statement that our financial position is good. I mean, you can look at our audits and you can see we have plenty of cash, not in contrast to the amount of money we need to spend now. But I disagree. I don't know that our system is really financially strong. And it's because we're so small. I base that on because of our size, that we're too small to actually take care of what's going to need to be taken care of without some pretty significant borrowings into the future. And every time we borrow money, then that creates more debt service and the need for more revenue. That's it.
Okay. Any other comments? Thanks for your points, Jim. Anybody else? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Everybody, thank you for participating. Anybody who's still on from our residents out there, thank you for joining us. As I said, we will be having our April meeting. Hopefully it will be live. If you do have additional questions or anything else you want information on, Diana can provide that to you. We'll be putting additional information on the website between now and then. And as you have any additional questions, we'd be more than happy to try to answer those. So thank you much. Everybody have a nice St. Patrick's Day.
You too. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you. Yep. Just a second.
Oops.
Judy says that. She says. Hello, are you still here? You're that one guy kept asking us questions if I didn't have those 20 presentations. Well, I imagine we probably should have a lot of mail coming because we. Or would you like a salad with, actually, I do have salad